Welcome. Let's look at the stomach. The stomach is an expanded J-shaped region or sac-like region of the GI tract. This is the GI tract from the esophagus. This is the esophagus within the thoracic cavity. The esophagus pierces through the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm highlighted in red, separating the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. This is the thoracic cavity and this is the abdominal cavity. So we have the esophagus running through the thoracic cavity and it needs to enter into the abdominal cavity. And it can only do that by piercing the diaphragm, thereby creating a hole on the diaphragm that is called the esophageal hiatus. So it is through this esophageal hiatus that the esophagus penetrates into the abdominal cavity. And when it enters into the abdominal cavity, it runs a very short course before it finally expands to become the stomach. This is the interesting transformation that occurs between the esophagus and also the stomach. So you have the abdominal region of the esophagus before you now have the expanded region of the GI tract that is termed the stomach. And this is the region of the stomach before you now have the continuation of the GI tract down, where the stomach becomes continuous as the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Then we have the large intestine, then the rectum, and finally we have the anal canal, which opens to the external environment. So this is the region of the stomach. It is sac-like and expanded region of the GI tract. This is a muscular bag that is seen between the esophagus, as we have initially described, and also the small intestine. But the specific region of the small intestine is the duodenum, because the duodenum is the initial segment of the small intestine. So you see it between the esophagus and also the duodenum. Talking about the location of the stomach, we know that the stomach is located in the abdominal cavity, but what specific region of the abdominal cavity is the stomach located? If you try to divide the abdominal cavity into 4 regions, we have a midline demarcation drawn along the median plane, and we have a transverse line that is drawn along the umbilicus. So you have a vertical and horizontal line that is drawn, dividing the abdominal space into 4 compartments. So you have the right region, which is further subdivided into a right upper region and a right lower region. Then we have the left region that is further subdivided into a left upper region and a left lower region. So we have the right upper quadrant and we have the right lower quadrant. And so you have the left upper quadrant and also the left lower quadrant. So you have 4 quadrants within the abdominal space that is being created. So if you want to specifically state the region of the abdominal space where the stomach is located, we can say that the stomach is located in the left upper quadrant of the abdomen. So this is the left upper quadrant, and this is the region where you see the stomach. The functions of the stomach include that they are able to stretch, and because they have the capacity to stretch, they tend to create like a storage medium for food. So as food is being ingested through the oral cavity, it goes down through the esophagus. Because the stomach has features that allow it to be able to expand, it's going to create space for food to be stored. So it has like a storage medium, and of course it can hold up to 2 liters of food particles within it. You can see the extent at which it's able to support this function. Then the second function is that they help to digest proteins. And they are also able to do this because they contain enzymes that are referred to as pepsin and renin. The pepsin helps to break down protein into peptone, while the renin helps to curdle milk. The stomach also acts as a food mixer. We've said that the wall of the stomach, if you look at this image down, you see that the stomach is made up of oblique, circular, and also longitudinal type of muscles that are seen to be in layers. So this muscle undergoes some form of contraction and relaxation. And as they do this, they are helping to mix the content that is seen within the stomach. And this helps to like bring the food particles together with the enzymes so that the reaction can take place and the breakdown process can also occur. The mixture of the food particles and the enzymes will form the chyme. The stomach is responsible for sterilization. It helps to sterilize gastric content. And it's able to do this because it's made up of parietal cells that produces hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid that is produced by this cell attack or destroy foreign organisms that find their way into the gastric environment. It's also involved in the absorption of small molecules, but the absorption property or function of the stomach is not as what is seen in the small intestine. The small intestine is solely responsible for absorption of nutrients. In the stomach, absorption also occurs, but at a very minimal rate. So it helps to absorb small molecules such as water, medication, and also amino acids. So let's go further, looking at the internal configuration of the stomach. The stomach, if opened up and you try to look at the internal configuration of the stomach, you see that the internal wall of the stomach are not smooth. It's not as what you will see in the outer presentation of the stomach. If you look at the stomach from the outside, you see that it is smooth, but when you open it up and you look at the internal wall, you see that the internal wall is not smooth. It is thrown into folds. And these folds, it's like a distinct elevation and depression. And these are called gastric folds or rugae. And this is the internal wall of the stomach thrown into folds. This rugae tends to help to increase the surface area of the internal wall of the stomach. If we go back to the functions of the stomach that we've listed, you see that they help in the process of breaking down food substances, and also at the minimal rate, they also help to absorb. So all these processes occur in the stomach. The expression of folds within the mucosal wall or the internal wall of the stomach, which are called rugae, help to increase the surface area for these processes so that the processes can occur at a higher grade or at a higher level, so that more of the nutrients will be broken down and also more will be absorbed. It also creates a means through which expansion will occur. Also, when we talked about the function of the stomach, the first function that we highlighted was that it's able to stretch so as to create a space for food particles to be stored. And this is allowed because the internal wall of the stomach are thrown into folds. So as food substances are coming into the gastric environment, the rugae will gradually thin out. And as they are thinning out, they are helping to increase the capacity of the stomach by creating expansion. Also, we have the gastric canal. The gastric canal is like an indentation or like a gutter that is created along the lesser curvature. This is the lesser curvature of the stomach, and this is the greater curvature. Just as the name implies, lesser curvature is a smaller curvature, while greater curvature is a bigger curvature. So along the lesser curvature, we have a canal that is seen along that part, and this is called the gastric canal. What this gastric canal does is that it helps to allow the passage of ingested liquid. So any liquid that enters the gastric environment, it is going to be directed through this gastric canal. And that is why we see that this region is prone to irritation from ingested liquids such as alcohol or other toxic liquid that we ingest into the stomach. Let's talk about the regions of the stomach. The stomach is divided into different regions. The first region is the cardiac region. And we said that this is the esophagus. This is like the structure that the stomach is seen after. So immediately after the esophagus, the region that you see towards the entrance of the stomach is called the cardiac region. So this is the cardiac region. Then the next region is the fundus. The fundus is the region that is seen above the cardiac region. This region looks like a hunchback kind of structure that is seen to bulge above the cardiac region, and this is the fundus. In the fundus, what is majorly stored in the fundus are ingested gases. The fundus of the stomach can also be used in clinical application as it relates to trough space. The trough space is located around the region of the fundus, and also the surrounding organs like the spleen, the left lobe of the liver, and also the left lung are related to this space. This space during percussion tends to produce a tympanic sound, and this tympanic sound is produced as a result of the gaseous content that is in the fundus of the stomach. And this can be used to establish disease conditions of the different organs that are located around this region. So it is due to the presence or the accumulation of gas within the fundus of the stomach that is responsible for this tympanic sound. And this sound, its reduction or its total loss can be used to establish disease conditions of the different organs that are located around this region. So the fundus of the stomach, as a region of the stomach that contains gas, is important or relevant in trial space in dictating certain disease condition of the different organs that are also located around that region. The next region is the body. The body is the largest region of the stomach, and it is seen extending from this region down to this region, and this is the body. So you see it between the fundus and also the pylorus. The next region is the pylorus, and the pylorus is the funnel-shaped region that is seen distal to the body. This is the body, and this is the pylorus region. So region from this region down to this region. The pylorus is also further subdivided into two. We have the pyloric antrium, and this is the pyloric antrium, just immediately after the body. Then you have a more distal region that is called the pyloric canal, and this is the pyloric canal. Also, other regions include the lesser curvature and the greater curvature. This is the lesser curvature, the curvature that is smaller on the right side, and we have a greater curvature that is seen on the left side of the stomach. The cardiac notch is the angulature that is created between the fundus and the lower part of the esophagus around the entrance of the stomach. So this is the cardiac notch. And we have the insula angularis. This is the insula angularis. It is the most indented part of the lesser curvature. That's the most depressed region of the lesser curvature. And if an imaginary line is drawn from this region to the region of the greater curvature, this will mark the beginning of the pyloric region. So from this region down to this region is the pyloric region of the stomach. So these are the regions of the stomach and also the different features that is seen in the outer configuration of the stomach. So going to the sphincter, we said that the stomach is like a storage organ. And of course, for it to be a storage organ, food substances or particles needs to move into it, and they will also need to exit the stomach so that they can go down the tract for further processing and also absorption. So for food not to be moved at free will, there is the creation of the sphincter. So food are not just allowed to move as they want to and fro the stomach. So that is why we have the formation of the sphincters. The sphincters are structurally made up of thickening of the muscular layer of the stomach. So there's a muscular thickening around the entrance of the stomach, and there's another muscular thickening around the exit of the stomach. This thickening basically is to create like a constriction, because as it thickens, it's definitely going to reduce the lumen around this region. So this is going to create like a control mechanism that will control the passage or movement of food particles through it into the stomach and also exit the stomach. So we have the first one, we have the cardiac sphincter or the lower esophageal sphincter, and this is the cardiac sphincter. This is a muscular thickening around the entrance of the stomach. And what it does is to control the entrance of food into the stomach. Then we have the pyloric sphincter, which is seen around the pyloric region. And what it does is to control the exit of food particles into the duodenum. So this is the pyloric sphincter. Also within the sphincter, we have orifices. We have the cardiac orifice. This is the cardiac orifice. The cardiac orifice is a reduced part that is created around the sphincter. This is the thickening of the wall. The thickening of the wall has helped to reduce the caliber of the wall around this region, so that it's going to help control the passage of food through it. So we see that this lumen is narrowed down, and this opening is referred to as the orifice. We also have the pyloric orifice down here, which is the opening that is created around the pyloric sphincter. Then going to the relations of the stomach, we said that the stomach has the capacity to expand. And when it expands, it's definitely going to have impact on the surrounding organs. So it's good for us to check the relations of the stomach. And of course, they are very interesting to look into. For the anterior relations, our organs are located in the anterior region of the stomach, and this includes the anterior abdominal wall, which is on the outside. Then we have the left costal margin, because we say the stomach is located in the left upper chondrians. So it's the left costal margin that is related to the stomach. Then we have the diaphragm. The diaphragm is like an inverted bow, which of course we extend anteriorly over the stomach and also posteriorly. By the time we get to the posterior relation of the stomach, we also see that the diaphragm also forms part of the posterior relation of the stomach. So it's like an inverted bow that has an extension in the anterior and also in the posterior. So as part of the anterior relation of the stomach, we would list the diaphragm. Then we have the left lobe of the liver. This is the liver. Of course, the region of the liver that is related anteriorly to the stomach would be the left lobe. This is the right region, and this is the left region. So this is the right lobe of the liver. This is the left lobe of the liver. It is the left lobe of the liver that forms the anterior relation of the stomach. There is no cramming of this. If we know how these organs are placed, we would be able to establish the specific regions of these organs that form the relation of the stomach. Then we have the left vagus nerve. The left vagus nerve is also an anterior relation of the stomach, and this can be explained using developmental process. During the development of form, the left vagus nerve is located in the left side of the stomach, and that is why it is the left vagus nerve. But because of the rotation of the stomach during the development of form, as it rotates, it then brings the left vagus nerve to the anterior region. So as it is rotating, it's pushing it. So what happens during the development of form cannot be used to explain what we see in the presentation after birth, and this will later form the anterior gastric plexus that is seen in the anterior region of the stomach. So going to the posterior relation, this means that there are structures or organs that are seen behind the stomach, and this of course forms the stomach bed. So when we try to remove the stomach, the structures that we would see behind it include the lesser sac, the diaphragm. Also, as we've described in our initial slide, we said that it's like an inverted bow that has anterior and posterior extension. So it's also definitely going to form the posterior relation of the stomach. Then we have the spleen. This is the spleen. The spleen is located behind the stomach. We have the splenic artery, which is a branch of the celiac trunk that extends to supply the spleen. So the splenic artery will also form part of the posterior relation of the stomach. Then we have other structures which include the left suprarenal gland or the adrenal gland. We have the kidney highlighted in black, and on top of the kidney, we have the adrenal gland or the suprarenal gland, which is a gland that is located above the kidney. This specifically is the left kidney because we say the stomach is located in the left upper quadrant. So the right kidney is not a posterior relation of the stomach, but the left kidney, because we've said that the stomach is located in the left upper quadrant of the abdominal space. Then we have the pancreas. This is the pancreas highlighted in green. The pancreas also forms the posterior relation of the stomach. Then we have the transverse colon. This is the transverse part of the colon. It's also seen behind the stomach, and also the mesentery of the transverse colon, which is also referred to as the transverse mesocolon. Then we have the right vagus nerve. Remember, we said the left vagus nerve forms the anterior relation of the stomach. The right vagus nerve forms the posterior relation of the stomach. This is also being justified due to the rotation of the stomach. On the right side, we have the location of the right vagus nerve during the development of form. But as it rotates, it also rotates and pushes or turns the right vagus nerve behind. And that is why the right vagus nerve then becomes the posterior relation of the stomach. The right vagus nerve will also form the posterior gastric plexus of nerve that will be seen around the posterior part of the stomach. So as we have the left vagus nerve forming the anterior gastric plexus of nerve. Then talking about the peritoneal relation of the stomach and the omentum, we've said that the stomach is an expanded region of the GI tract. And for it to be expanded, it means it's going to be increased in size. And when it does this means that these structures need to be supported for it to be held in place during the process of expansion. But before we go into that, it's good for us to check the relation of the peritoneum with the stomach. What kind of peritoneum covering does the stomach present? Is it an intraperitoneal organ or a retroperitoneal organ? The stomach is an intraperitoneal organ, which means that it is located within the peritoneum. If you look at this image up, it will help us to understand this. This is the organ, and you see the peritoneum highlighted in dark dotted red. So you see that the peritoneum covers the entire surface of an intraperitoneal organ. So it now leaves the extension at one end. It's called the mesentery. Then you have another at the other end. But you see that the peritoneum covers the entire surface of this organ, and this kind of organ is called an intraperitoneal organ. Then for another type of organ that we refer to as retroperitoneal organ, this organ has the peritoneum covering just one region of this organ. So it just lines one surface of the organ. An example of this kind of organs are the kidney. The kidney is a retroperitoneal organ, but for the stomach that we are looking at is an intraperitoneal organ. It means that it has the peritoneum covering or investing the entire surface of the organ. So for stomach to be intraperitoneal, it means that it's going to have an extension of its mesentery. And this will lead us to the formation of the omentum. The omentum, double layer of peritoneum that is seen in the stomach. And this is the kind of presentation that we have at one end and also at the other end. We have two major types of omentum. We have the lesser omentum. This is the lesser omentum. From the name lesser omentum, it means the omentum that is related to the lesser curvature of the stomach. Then we have the greater omentum, and this is the greater omentum. And of course, the greater omentum is related to the greater curvature of the stomach. Let's drive into the lesser and the greater omentum to see the interesting thing that they present. The lesser omentum, we said that it is related to the lesser curvature. So it connects the lesser curvature of the stomach. This is the lesser curvature of the stomach to the liver. Because the liver, when we talked about the relations of the stomach, one of the organs that we highlighted was the liver. We said that the liver is one of the anterior relation of the stomach, and it is closer to the stomach. We have the double layer of peritoneum connecting the lesser curvature of the stomach to the liver, also connecting the upper part of the duodenum to the liver. So that is how we see the lesser omentum. So this is the lesser omentum connecting the lesser curvature to the liver. And we have another region of the lesser omentum that is connecting the upper part of the duodenum, because we've said that the duodenum is the next structure that is followed with the stomach, which is a part of the small intestine. So we also have another region of the lesser omentum that connects the upper part of the duodenum to the liver. And that is why the lesser omentum is divided into two sub-regions. So we have the first region that is called the hepatogastric ligament. The hepatogastric ligament, from the name, all we need to do is to break it down. The hepatic and gastric, it means it connects the liver with the stomach. This is the hepatogastric ligament. Then we have the hepatoduodenal ligament. From the name, all we still need to do is to break it down. It means it connects the liver with the duodenum. So this is the region of the hepatoduodenal ligament connecting the upper part of the duodenum with the liver. But the combination of these two ligaments, the hepatogastric ligament and the hepatoduodenal ligament, will form the lesser omentum. Okay, what are now the functions of this lesser omentum? Apart from creating structural support or helping to hold the stomach in place at the upper region, it also helps to accommodate neurovascular structures. We already know that the lesser omentum is further subdivided into the hepatogastric ligament and the hepatoduodenal ligament. So these two ligaments are different regions forming the lesser omentum, accommodate different vessels. So on the right side, where we have the hepatoduodenal ligament, that's the ligament connecting the superior part of the duodenum with the liver. In this region, we have vessels such as the hepatic artery, the hepatic portal vein, the common bile duct, the lymphatics, and also the hepatic plexus of nerves running through this region. While on the left side, where we have the hepatogastric ligament, we have the right and the left gastric arteries and also the gastric veins running through the hepatogastric ligament on the left side. So we see that at the different regions of the lesser omentum, where we have the subdivisions of this ligament, we have different vessels running through them. The greater omentum. The greater omentum actually has an interesting part. So you have the double layer of peritoneum, and you see it descending down, running from the greater curvature of the stomach. So it descends as far as the pelvic region before it now decides to fold over itself like an apron. And when it folds over itself, it begins to run upward again before it's finally inserted onto the transverse column. So you can see that the pattern by which the greater omentum runs is very funny, kind of, because you see it extending down, forgetting where it is going before it finally turns over itself, backwards, upward again. Then finally is now inserted on the anterior surface of the transverse column. So that is why you see that the greater omentum is made up of 4 layers instead of the normal 2 layers that is seen in the lesser omentum, because it descends down and turns over itself, thereby creating a 4-layered structure around that region. So this is the greater omentum. We also have other supporting ligaments around the greater curvature of the stomach. We have the gastrophrenic ligament, and this is the gastrophrenic ligament. All we also need to do is to break down the name, gastric and phrenic. Phrenic is the diaphragm. So it means it connects diaphragm with the greater curvature of the stomach at this region. Then we have the gastrosplenic ligament, which means that it connects the stomach at the region of the greater curvature with the spleen, and this is the gastrosplenic ligament. These 2 ligaments also tend to create a form of structural support for the stomach. Because they run from the greater curvature of the stomach, they may also be classified as the greater omentum. Let's look at the functions of the greater omentum. Apart from creating structural support for the stomach at the lower region, it also helps to prevent adhesion along the peritoneal surfaces so that organs are not having contact with each other. So it helps to prevent organ adhesion. This will prevent organs sticking with one another. So it will help to keep the organs in place or keep them in the position where they should be. It also creates a form of storage space for fat. You see a lot of fat deposits on the greater omentum. So instead of the fat being deposited on the intestine or other organs around this region, it helps to hold the fat, preventing fat from being deposited on the organs of the abdominal cavity. And this can tend to affect the functions of these organs. It also presents immune property. If you look at the surface of the greater omentum, you see that there are milky spots on it that helps to attack foreign organisms that find their way into the abdominal space. Then finally, it also helps to limit the spread of diseases, intraperitoneal infection. And it does this by wrapping around the organs that are infected. So if it sees that a particular organ within the abdominal space is infected, it's going to wrap around it so as to prevent the spread of that disease to other organs that are located within the abdomen. So let's look at the blood supply of the stomach. The blood supply of the stomach is from the celiac trunk. The celiac trunk is a branch of the abdominal aorta. So this is the abdominal aorta. And from the abdominal aorta, we have the celiac trunk. This is the celiac trunk that supplies structures of the foreguts. And inferior to the celiac trunk, we have the superior mesenteric artery that supplies organs of the midgut. Then we have the inferior mesenteric artery that supplies organs of the hindgut. But because the stomach is one of the organs of the foregut, it would be supplied by branches from the celiac trunk. So this is the celiac trunk. The celiac trunk is the first major anterior branch of the abdominal aorta, and it arises immediately inferior to the aortic opening of the diaphragm. The aortic opening of the diaphragm is the hole that is created by the abdominal aorta, so as for it to be able to enter through the abdominal space. As it is coming from the thorax, it needs to pierce the diaphragm for it to be able to enter into the abdomen. So it arises around the T12 thoracic vertebra. This is the celiac trunk. This is the superior mesenteric artery, and we have the inferior mesenteric artery. So further on the celiac trunk, we have 3 branches. We have the left gastric artery, and this is the left gastric artery. It supplies the lower part of the esophagus and also the right region of the fundus. So from this region down to this region is where it supplies. Then we have the splenic artery. From the name, it means the artery that supplies the spleen. This is the splenic artery that emerges, and you see it is directly running towards the spleen to supply the spleen, but not just supplying the spleen. So as it goes to supply the spleen, it gives off branches that supplies the left part of the fundus and also the upper part of the greater curvature. Then we have the last branch of the celiac trunk, which is the common hepatic artery. This is the common hepatic artery. This artery gives off branches to supply the lower part of the stomach. I'll be putting up a lecture on the blood supply of the stomach. Please watch out for this. The venous drainage. The celiac artery does not have a similarly named vein, so there is no celiac vein. But what happens is that the celiac artery gives off branches to supply different regions of the stomach with blood and oxygen. So the corresponding named vein of these branches will be collected and be drained into the hepatic portal vein. And this is the hepatic portal vein. The hepatic portal vein will collect the venous drainage from the corresponding named arteries that are branched from the celiac trunk. And as it collects it, it empties it into the liver. We know that the liver is responsible for the production of plasma proteins, the production of bile, and also other chemical substances. They are also involved in detoxification. And of course, the liver will need materials for it to build on and produce these substances. And the hepatic portal vein will bring substances that are collected from the stomach to the liver, where these raw materials can be made available to the liver for it to undergo its production. After emptying the venous collection of blood from the stomach into the liver, and the liver uses it up, the remaining blood that is deoxygenated and filtered will be collected back into the hepatic vein. So we now have the normal route, which is the hepatic vein, and this is the hepatic vein. The hepatic vein will then empty this venous blood that is released by the liver into the inferior vena cava. This is the inferior vena cava highlighted in green. From the inferior vena cava, we know that the inferior vena cava will unite with the superior vena cava to form the vena cava. And this is the vena cava. The vena cava will then empty the venous blood into the right side of the heart. From the right side of the heart, it is now collected back into the lungs for it to be oxygenated by the pulmonary artery, which is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood, because we have deoxygenated blood in the right side of the heart, which needs to be oxygenated, and the vessel that will take it up from the heart to the lungs where it will be oxygenated is the pulmonary artery. You can see how interesting this is. And oxygenated blood will then be made available back through the celiac trunk. So that is how it goes back and forth, and that is the basics. The lymphatic drainage of the stomach is a very interesting topic, and it is very important. It is important in the sense that it helps to return excess proteins and fluid back into the venous blood. These are mopped up from the tissue of the stomach. So it is the lymphatic drainage that is responsible for this mopping up process, so that excess proteins and also fluid will be returned back into the venous blood and will not be left within the tissues of the stomach. So they also help to pick up bacteria and directed to the lymph nodes, where they will be filtered out and also destroyed. So you can see the essence of the lymphatic drainage of the stomach and how important it is. So let's go to the lymphatic drainage of the stomach to unfold the basis behind it. The lymph nodes in the stomach region are located around the arteries. So we have the different arteries that are branched off from the celiac trunk, as we have described in our previous slide, that we have branches from the celiac trunk that supply different regions of the stomach. So around the different arteries, we have lymph nodes. So they are located around the arteries, and these lymph nodes are complex and are also drained in a multidirectional pattern. But before we go into that, let's look at the different lymph nodes that we have around the stomach. First, we have the left gastric lymph nodes. This is the left gastric lymph node that is located along the lesser curvature of the stomach. And of course, it will drain region around the upper region of the lesser curvature of the stomach. Then we have the right gastric lymph node that is located in the lower part of the lesser curvature of the stomach. Of course, it will drain the lower region of the lesser curvature of the stomach. Then we have the pancreaticosplenic lymph nodes. The pancreaticosplenic lymph nodes If you break the name down, you see that they are located between the pancreas. This is the pancreas and the spleen, and this is the spleen. So they are located between the pancreas and the spleen, and that is why they are so named the pancreatico-splenic lymph nodes. They drain the spleen and also the pancreas, and they also help to drain the upper region of the greater curvature of the stomach. We have the gastroepiploic lymph nodes that drain the lower part of the greater curvature, and this is where they are located. Then we have the subpyloric lymph nodes. This is located below the pyloric region of the stomach, and they drain this region. Then we have the hepatic lymph node. The hepatic lymph nodes drain the liver, but also they collect drainage from other lymph nodes that are located within the stomach. So we have seen how these lymph nodes are located at specific regions of the stomach and also draining different regions of the stomach. But let's now go further to see the direction by which they drain. So they have specific pattern by which they drain. But before we go into that, let's first divide the region of the stomach into two. We have the right 2/3 and the left 1/3. So using this alignment that is seen in yellow coloration, we have the right 2/3 and we have the left 1/3. We can also further divide the right 2/3 into a bigger upper region and a smaller lower region. Then for the left 1/3, we can also further subdivide it into a smaller upper region and a bigger lower region. So we have 4 sub-regions that has been created with this alignment. Going further, let's now pick the different lymph nodes and see the pattern or the direction by which they drain. So for the left gastric lymph node, we already said that this is the left gastric lymph node. This left gastric lymph node will drain the lower part of the esophagus and the upper part of the lesser curvature. So lymph from this region will be collected and will be directed into the celiac lymph nodes. This celiac lymph node is also a group of lymph nodes that are located around the celiac trunk. This is the abdominal aorta. We have the emergence of the celiac trunk around this region. So also we have the celiac lymph node located around the celiac trunk. So these are collected into the celiac lymph nodes. The celiac lymph node is like a central collection point. Then going to the left lymph node, which is the right gastric lymph node. This is the right gastric lymph node. Where does the right gastric lymph node drain? It drains the remaining lower region of the lesser curvature and also the upper part of the pyloric region. So as it drains this, it is collected into the right gastric lymph nodes. From the right gastric lymph node, it is emptied into the celiac lymph nodes. You can see that the celiac lymph node is like the end collection point of all the lymph nodes. So let's go to the next lymph node. The next lymph node is the pancreatico-splenic lymph node. We already said that it's located between the pancreas and also the spleen. Looking at the position where this lymph node is located, we already should know that it will drain the upper part of the greater curvature, and that is where it drains, and it is emptied directly into the celiac lymph nodes. You can see the direction by which they are draining. Then the next one is the subpyloric lymph node. The subpyloric lymph node, we already say, is located below the pyloric region, and this is the subpyloric lymph node. And where it drains is the lower part of the pyloric region. So as it drains this region, where it empties into is the hepatic lymph node. So this empties into the hepatic lymph node. From the hepatic lymph node, it's emptied into the celiac lymph nodes. Then we have the next one, the right gastroepiploic lymph node. This is the right gastroepiploic lymph nodes. And where it drains is the lower part of the greater curvature of the stomach. And when it drains this region, it empties it into the subpyloric lymph nodes. From the subpyloric lymph node, it goes into the hepatic lymph nodes. From the hepatic lymph nodes, it is drained finally into the celiac lymph nodes. And that is how it goes. All this drainage, we said, are collected into the celiac lymph nodes, which is like the final collection point of the lymph draining the different regions of the stomach. So as they are collected into the celiac nodes, which is located around, of course, the celiac artery, this is then emptied into the cristallina chylae, which is the expanded part of the thoracic duct. From there, it empties into the thoracic duct. From the thoracic duct, it is then returned back into the venous blood. So that is how the drainage occurs. Then the nerve supplied for the sympathetic innervation is being supplied by the celiac plexus, while the parasympathetic innervation of the stomach is supplied by the right and the left vagus nerve. Clinical anatomy. We have the gastric ulcer. This occurs when you have sore within the internal mucosa of the stomach. And the causes of this include Helicobacter pylori, which causes infection that tends to create this sore. Also, hydrochloric acid, smoking and alcohol can also cause sore. We also have symptoms of this that ranges from burning sensation and also pain. Major treatment option could be the use of antibiotic. Then we have gastritis. Gastritis is an inflammation or irritation of the internal wall of the stomach. The possible causes could be chronic vomiting, alcohol, stress. Certain medication can also cause the inflammation of the internal lining of the stomach. Drugs such as aspirin can cause this. Then symptoms include vomiting, abdominal pain. There could also be the loss of appetite. Major treatment options include the use of anti-inflammatory drugs. Then we have gastric or stomach cancer. This is a malignant tumor, cells of abnormal cells that are continuously dividing. And of course, this we have the capacity to spread to other regions. This is an exercise for us to check our understanding of this lecture. And the first question is to describe the structural basis for gastric expansion. What are the morphological bases that are set up for the stomach to be able to expand to accommodate food particles? Also, the second question is for us to describe the lesser and the greater omenta. Then the third question is explain in detail the lymphatic drainage of the stomach. Thanks for watching this video. Let's meet again.